Subscribe to The Honest Critique for current affairs, movie, book, and product reviews. Also, make sure you press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the video series are solely those of the individuals and do not necessarily represent those of The Honest Critique and its employees. The following video contains strong language which may be offensive to some viewers. Viewer discretion advised.
Hello and a very warm welcome. I'm delighted to be joined by Rabbi Eliezer Simcha Weiss, who is a member of the Chief Rabbinate Council in Israel. So thank you so much, sir, for taking your time and speaking to us.
It's a pleasure and a privilege. And it's something to take my mind off the war here in Israel.
I'm sure, sir, it is a really harrowing situation. It's a devastating situation I've seen from October 7th of around 1,400 Israelis have lost their life due to this brutal Hamas attack. And I thought to start this conversation with how Hamas is being looked at from the lens of Judaism, how Judaism look at Hamas as which is a terrorist organization which is inflicting harm on innocent civilians in Israel.
Listen, Judaism is a peace-loving religion. We believe that every man is made in the image of God, and therefore we respect all and every religions, providing that they believe in the what of God, in humanity, in the image of God. Unfortunately, the Hamas wish to practice genocide. They say it's part of their program to destroy and eliminate the Jewish people. And their attack last 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago was the most awful, horrific butchering of people in the most cruel, tortuous way that you can see in your life, that you can ever see or ever imagine. I've seen the pictures. I've been to these cemeteries, and I can tell you, you wouldn't like to see the scenes that took place in these places. And therefore, that's what I can tell you. We would have liked to live in peace. This situation wouldn't have come about if Israel hadn't been blinded by the belief that perhaps the Hamas have changed their minds and changed their ways, and therefore Israel allowed them to bring to Gaza funds, tremendous funds, which instead of using for their own purposes, for the humanitarian purposes, they used it to plan this awful attack upon Israel. And so we're unfortunately in this situation. We will defend ourselves. Judaism is a religion, the mother religions of the Christianity and Muslims were there before, and we shall survive. But it's very sad that in this day and age, people think that in order to further their religious beliefs, they can butcher, slaughter, kill, maim, do whatever they like, and burn people. So those are a few things I can tell you about Judaism. But Judaism respects all and every religion. I'm saying that Judaism respects all religions. We believe that there are many ways to God. And my way isn't the only way. Your way, whatever your way, everybody has their own ways to God. God is great enough to incorporate all different sort of religions. But this situation here is the most awful situation where a group who claim to be religious use their religion to die and to destroy a people, a genocide. This is actually written in their program, in the Hamas program. And they are a risk not only to Israel, they're a risk to the civilized world. I mean, if they succeed, God forbid, and they won't with Israel, they will go further. You can see there's an uprising in the whole world of anti-Semitism, which is caused by these people who are inflaming inflaming people throughout the world because there's so many of sympathizers against the Jewish people, and it will continue. It will continue against the Christians. It will continue against, God forbid, the Hindus and the Muslims of different sorts, as we know, between the Muslims themselves, there's tremendous wars and killings, etc. So Judaism is a peace-loving religion. The main thing in the world, when we pray, we stand in our prayers, and then we take at the end of our prayers, we take 3 steps backwards and say, may the Almighty God grant peace. Why do we take 3 steps backwards? Because we realize we've got it. In order to find peace, people have to compromise. But you can't be compromised on this terrible cruelty. There are limits to what a person can do.
I absolutely understand, sir.
I think that, in a nutshell, what Judaism has to say.
Yes, sir. And a lot of times we have seen when an incident like what happened on October 7th happens, a lot of rage and this anger for revenge starts. And a lot of people here in the international media have shown what's happening in Gaza is also a humanitarian crisis. I wanted to understand from your perspective of what you see in Gaza with the bombings, air bombings actually, airstrikes happening in Gaza. How do you look at that? And how's Judaism perceive this revenge? And what's Judaism's message for war?
Well, Judaism isn't looking for revenge. We are looking to defend ourselves. And you have to realize that these buildings that are being bombed, they're being bombed because underneath these buildings, these tremendous channels, these tremendous, there's like an underground system, like the metro system of where all the leaders of Hamas hold out. And that's why they have to be bombed. Now, there's a remarkable thing. You wouldn't believe it. Israel informs those people who live in those areas that they're going to bomb them and they should move out to a different area, because the area where they're living is an area where underneath, behind there, with them is all these centers of this Hamas leadership. Israel is very humanitarian, and from that point of view, we can't be the only Christians in the world and turn your other cheek and allow ourselves to be destroyed. But what Israel has done is to ask the people in that area to leave and to move to a different area which isn't so dangerous for them. Unfortunately, the Hamas used hospitals, they use mosques, religious places, as the center of their activities. Now, and this is the great problem, but as you know, there was a complaint about the missile hit on a hospital, when it turned out that missile that hit the hospital was a missile of themselves. But this whole idea that you use a hospital to be a center of terrorist activity is the most awful thing. Now, Israel is very humanitarian, notwithstanding that there's hardly any release of the hostages. Who, the hostages are kids. There's kids of 5 years old. There's babies being taken hostage. You know that. Little babies being taken hostage. Babies whose mothers were slaughtered, and they took the babies. I don't know who's looking after them. They're not being released, and yet Israel's providing water and to them, and obviously not in the exact place where the Arabs wish to receive it, the Hamas, but Israel is doing a minimum of causing soldiers to risk their lives because of this humanitarian action, something we never see at all in other places. I mean, when the British bombed in Europe, they didn't ask if it was a hospital there or whether you left your house or wherever it is. But Israel has to do that, and it's a very dangerous thing for Israel. But nonetheless, we expect that the world will understand Israel's predicament and will support Israel. And please God, if we succeed against these Hamas, these butchers of the world will be a safer place to live in.
Yes, sir. I truly understand the situation, and this is what I actually want to ask you the next question, actually, as that you have a lot of followers in Israel, and some of them who comes to you at this time of grief, at this time of crisis. What's your message to your followers who are coming to you for support? Because it is a crucial time and it is a troubling time as well. We have seen a lot of people have lost their lives. Some of might be their loved ones, or some of them are actually going to fight the war as reserve forces. So, what are you telling your followers right now?
Listen, if you are a believer, if you believe in God, then there are no real questions, or there's no answers to your questions. You have to believe that there's a divine plan. There's no way you can comfort a mother who's lost her child. There's no way you can comfort a father or a child who's lost their parents. You can only do your utmost to support them and to give them love and care and whatever you can do. And that's all we can do. Nobody can justify. You know, people often ask the religious, the theological question, where is God? How does God allow this to happen? But it isn't God. We have to ask, where is man? How can man do such awful situation? God creates man, puts him on the world, and this man does these terrible things. It's not God's responsibility, fault. And we can only we realize that these families are going to be affected for their lives, perhaps for their children's lives. Nobody's life is going to be the same. And when 500,000 young Israelis are on the borders, taken away from their mothers and children and their wives, they will never be saved. This is going to change the whole population of Israel. We look forward to the end of this awful conflict, but they say it's going to be lengthy. And part of the reason why it's lengthy is because Israel, at its own cost, is taking these humanitarian actions and being careful. And instead of bombing and completely destroying the areas, going stage by stage.
And is there anything for example, a lot of your followers might be joining the war right now, who as reserve forces. Well, how are you actually trying to make sure that they are well motivated and they are well emotionally strong at this point of time to fight the war, because it's a long battle that they're going for?
Listen, we know in Israel that it's a war for our survival. There's no other way. If we don't win this war, all Israel will be butchered, killed. There's no way we can't win the war. And this is why, despite the fact in the last 6 months or so, there was great campaigns in Israel. There's arguments over the government and over the legal system, etc., etc. Nonetheless, everybody has got together. People are fighting for their lives. It's not a professional army. They're fighting for their wives, for their children. That's what they're fighting for. And this is why they are motivated. And it's very awful to hear you turn on the news, this one's being killed, that one's being killed. Suddenly, after 3 weeks, they're only actually discovering some of the bodies. The bodies were so badly burned and killed, men. They had to use DNA to try and find out who the people were. And therefore, Israeli people are very, very dedicated, and I think there's tremendous amount of motivation. What will happen as time goes on, I don't know. But at the moment, everybody's very, very motivated.
So the last thing that I wanted to ask you is, we have seen a rise of anti-Semitism all over the world, especially in America and the European countries. Especially, even if I narrow it down, I wanted to ask you about the rise of anti-Semitism in Britain. Actually, in the last few weeks, there has been a lot of hate crimes, a lot of incidents where Jewish students were singled out. I wanted to understand your perspective on this sudden rise. Even in Russia, we saw yesterday of scores of people rushing inside the airport to actually find Jewish passengers. How do you look at the situation? Probably this is the most difficult situation after the Holocaust.
Well, nobody would have, never again. It'll never happen again. That's what we thought to ourselves after the Holocaust, 70, 80 years ago. But it's happened. Imagine what happened in Russia, that people rush on to a plane to check if there's any Jews on that. Is that normal? Nobody can imagine it. In England, I was born in England. In my time, there weren't so many Muslims, and England was a very free country, a country of kindness. England is a country of kindness. You know, people come from all over the world, and they settle there, and they haven't taken in the beauty of a true democracy. And this is why I think one of the reasons why they are campaigning so greatly, because they don't understand. They're taking advantage of the kindness and the goodness of the local people. Now, the Jewish people are very small. They're small numbers in England. The Muslims are far greater numbers, and they see that they don't go into the details. They see it as a pan-Muslim attack on Islam. It's not that they're greatly religious. Don't that the Muslims are all saints and scholars. They see it as a fight, continuing the fight for the dominance of Islam over the world, over the other religions. And I told you, Judaism says all religions are acceptable. The Muslims believe only their religions. And this is the big difference. And therefore, they believe that they strength to destroy or to do what they can. In England, in Britain, that is, the government is very sympathetic to Israel, as you know. But there are local populace who, on a Sunday is a free day, and they have something to do to campaign and most of the campaigns are anti-Semitically. I have nephews and nieces in London. There were certain days that they were scared to go to school. In America and other countries, the anti-Semitism in the universities is awful, and yet sometimes the universities don't protest against it. There are a lot of financial things involved in this. You know, Qatar, which supports universities, supports hotels, supports the money buys this great support for a lot of the anti-Semitism that exists in the world. And let's go back to Gaza. The tremendous amount of money have been flowing to Gaza. The UNRWA, the UN, were in charge of much of this money, and they didn't do anything about stopping the special schooling of hatred that existed there. And unfortunately, we're not all idealistic. Sometimes money affects us. Sometimes a false belief in religions. They have. Can you imagine that a boy phoned his mother from the butchering place, from the moshav where they butchered people? He said, "Mummy, on the phone, we have it copied. I've killed 10 people." And she said, "Wonderful. And when she doesn't matter if he's killed, because if he's killed, he'll go up to heaven and have 70 virgins or however many, God knows. And they're tremendous ideas which are not normal ideas. And we thought it would be never again. But there's 2,000 years of history of anti-Semitism and the dislike of the unlike. And it continues, unfortunately. And that is why it's so important that Israel succeeds, not for its own sake, for the world's sake, for the world's peace and harmony, and for their understanding. You've got to respect other people. You can't just butcher and kill and make them.
So the last thing before I let you go is if any message that you have for our Indian audience.
I think India is a wonderful country. I've been to India many times, to Hyderabad. And I think have you been to Hyderabad? Anyhow, what I see in India is the India I saw, very tolerant country. I never felt when I was in India, I was Jewish or not Jewish, and people accepted me. And I know in India there's so many different tribes and castes and good and those, and nonetheless India manages to live together. And I think that's a great thing. And it's important. It's important to honor the other, to honor his differences, and to realize you and I and everyone else, we all have 2 eyes, 1 nose, 2 ears, and we're all made in the same image. So I wish India should be a peaceful partner to Israel and help Israel. They've been great friends to Israel, and please God, they'll continue to be so.
So, well, that's all the questions that I had, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for taking your time and speaking to us.
Thank you. It's nice seeing you, and wish you success in your work. And please, God, pray for us.
Thank
to
you,
whoever you pray for, it doesn't matter to me.
Our prayers are with you, sir.